The station called Iron Halo floated in the dark between stars. It was larger than most cities and shaped like a wide silver ring. Ships of many sizes moved in and out of its docks every hour. Inside halls were filled with creatures from worlds that no human had seen with their own eyes until a few years ago. The military unity trials were about to begin. It was an event held every 4 cycles. Different species sent their best soldiers to prove their strength, speed, and skill. The goal was not only pride. The council wanted to see who could stand together in war if danger came from beyond known space. In the main assembly hall, tall beings with thick armor-like skin stood next to wide creatures with 4 arms. Some had glowing eyes. Some had heavy tails that hit the floor with dull sounds. Their voices were deep and strong. Near the back of the hall stood a human woman. Her name was Mira Hale. She looked small compared to almost everyone else. She wore a simple, dark training suit with the symbol of Earth on the shoulder. Her brown hair was tied back. Her hands were relaxed at her sides. She did not look nervous. 2 officers stood near the front platform. One was Captain Drox, a broad alien with dark blue skin and heavy bone plates across his shoulders. The other was Officer Varn, thinner but taller with long fingers and sharp eyes. Drox looked toward Mira and made a low sound in his throat. "That is the human candidate?" he asked. Varn checked his data pad.
"Yes. Species, human.
Homeworld, Earth. Gravity level, standard medium high. Bone density, higher than average, council norm." Drox let out a short laugh. "They call that medium high? She looks like she would break under real pressure." Varn studied Mira again. "The council invited them for political reasons. They are new. It shows unity." "Unity is not built on weakness," Drox said. Mira heard none of this. She was looking at the high ceiling of the hall. The metal beams were thick and crossed in patterns above. She liked large structures. They reminded her of bridges back on Earth. The commander of the trials stepped forward. His name was Talvek. He was old, and his silver scales had lost some of their shine, but his eyes were sharp and calm. "Welcome," Talvek said, his voice filling the hall. "Today we begin the first stage of testing, endurance under gravity change." A soft murmur moved through the crowd. Talvek continued, "All candidates will enter Chamber 1. Gravity will increase to 2 times standard council level. You will walk the length of the chamber. The one who finishes with the best time and lowest strain wins this round." Drox nodded with approval. "Now we will see," he said quietly. The candidates moved toward the wide doors of Chamber 1. The doors opened with a deep hum. Inside was a long metallic corridor with glowing lines on the floor to mark the path. One by one, the gravity field activated. The first candidate stepped in. When the gravity doubled, his heavy frame dropped to one knee. He growled and pushed himself up slowly. Step by step, he moved forward. The second candidate entered. She managed better, but still struggled. Her breathing became loud halfway through. When Mira's turn came, some of the aliens leaned forward to watch. A few whispered, "She will not last long." "Look at her arms, too thin." Mira stepped into the chamber. The door closed behind her. There was a soft sound as the gravity field rose. At first, her shoulders lowered slightly. The weight pressed down on her body. She felt the pull on her legs and spine. 2 times gravity. She took a breath. It felt heavy, like climbing stairs with a backpack. Then she started walking. Her steps were steady, not fast, not slow. Halfway through, a small smile touched her lips. It reminded her of hiking with her father in the mountains when she was younger. The air had been thin there. Each step had taken effort, but she had liked the effort. She reached the end of the chamber without falling or stopping. The door opened. She stepped out calmly. The hall was quiet for a moment. Officer Varn looked at his datapad. Strain levels low. Heart rate stable. Time above average. Drax crossed his arms. 2 times his basic level. Even young soldiers from my world train at 3 times. This proves nothing. Mirror. Heard that part. She looked toward Drax and gave a small nod, as if she agreed. Talvek raised a hand for silence. The first round is complete. Rest period begins now. Next challenge will be announced shortly. The crowd began to move and talk. Some aliens looked at Mira differently now, not with respect yet, but with less laughter. Mira walked down a side corridor away from the noise. She liked quiet spaces. Leo, a young maintenance worker with pale green skin and bright eyes, was checking wall panels nearby. He almost dropped his tools when he saw her. "You were in the gravity test," he said. "Yes," Mira answered. "You did not seem in pain," Leo said. She shrugged lightly. "It was not so bad."
Oh.
Most candidates had needed help walking after the test. "You must be very strong for a human," he said. Mira tilted her head. "I am average." A warning message flashed. Training Chamber 7 had activated without a scheduled session. Leo frowned. "That chamber is restricted." He looked down the corridor and saw a door closing at the far end. Mira was no longer there. Curious and worried about system failure, Leo hurried after her. Chamber 7 was used for advanced training. Only high-level officers could access it. The door slid open when Leo used his maintenance code. Inside, the lights were dim. At the center of the chamber was Mira. She was stretching her arms. Above her, a red display showed gravity level. 5.0, Leo froze. 5 times standard gravity. That level was marked as extreme. Even soldiers from heavy worlds trained at 4 times for short periods. A deep hum filled the chamber. As the gravity field increased, Mira bent her knees slightly as the pressure came down. Then she started running. Not slow jogging, running. Each step hit the metal floor with force. Sweat formed on her forehead. Her breathing grew deeper, but her pace stayed steady. Leo stared at the display again to check for error. 5.0 confirmed. Mira changed direction and began doing push-ups. Her arms shook slightly under the crushing weight, but she did not stop. She counted softly to herself. 27, 28, 29. Leo stepped backward until his back touched the wall. He had seen trained warriors collapse at 4 times gravity. She finished her set and stood up, breathing hard but smiling. She walked to the control panel and lowered the gravity back to normal. Only then did she notice Leo. He was still staring. "How long have you been there?" she asked. "Long enough," he said in a weak voice. She wiped sweat from her face. "Sorry, I did not mean to use a restricted room. I will log the time. That was 5 times gravity," Leo said slowly.
Yes. That level can cause bone fractures for most species. Mira nodded. It feels heavy, but that is the point.
She thought for a moment. "Because I can," she said simply. and because it makes normal gravity feel light. Leo did not know what to say. She picked up her small bag from the corner. Please do not report this as damage. I checked the systems. I did not overload anything. She walked past him and left the chamber. Leo stood alone for several seconds. Then, his training kicked in. He opened a secure channel to Officer Varn. I need to report something unusual, Leo said. Minutes later, in a private observation room, Leo replayed the chamber footage. Captain Drox watched with narrowed eyes. On the screen, Mira ran again under 5 times gravity. The room was silent. When the video ended, Drox spoke. This must be altered. A glitch in the gravity meter. Barn shook his head slowly. The system logs show stable output, no malfunction. Drox looked at Talvek, who had joined them without sound. The old commander's eyes were thoughtful.
How long did she remain at that level? Talvek asked.
32 minutes, Barn replied. That caused even Drox to stiffen. Impossible, Drox said. Talvek folded his hands behind his back. Nothing is impossible, he said quietly. Only untested. He turned to Pawn. Do not confront her yet. Increase tomorrow's trial difficulty. Quietly. I want to see her limits. If we push too hard and she breaks, the council will blame us. Talvek looked at him. If she truly is fragile, as you believe, then she will break at normal limits. If she is not, then we must understand what we are facing.
Back in her small assigned quarters, Mira sat on the edge of her bed.
Her muscles ached. The good kind of ache. She opened a small device and looked at a picture of Earth. Blue oceans. White clouds. Green land. Still heavy, she whispered to herself. A message appeared on her wall screen. Next trial begins at first light. Cycle. Gravity endurance level adjusted. She smiled slightly. Good, she said. Outside her room in the wide metal halls of Iron Halo, rumors were already spreading. Some said the human cheated. Some said the machines were wrong. Some began to wonder. Captain Drox stood at a large window looking at the stars. He replayed the image of her running in his mind. 5 times gravity. For fun. He felt something unfamiliar. Not fear. Not yet. But doubt. And doubt, he knew, was more dangerous than either strength or weakness. The next trial would reveal the truth. Or it would change everything they believed about the so-called fragile species. The day after the first trial, the atmosphere inside Iron Halo was tense. Rumors of Mira Hale's private training in 5 times gravity had spread quietly among the candidates. Some whispered in corners. Some simply stared at her as she walked through the halls. She ignored them all, her focus sharp and calm. Commander Talvek had requested a private meeting with her early in the morning. The old alien sat in a high-backed chair, his silver scales catching the dim light of the room. Mira entered and bowed politely.
Good morning, Mira, Talvek said. Your performance yesterday was
unusual. The Council wishes to understand your capabilities better. Are you prepared for a controlled test? Mira nodded. Yes, sir. We will start with an intermediate gravity combat simulation, 3 times Council standard. You will face a trainee of your choice. You may choose anyone. Mira thought for a moment and pointed toward Rek, a tall, muscular alien with green scales and thick claws. Rek had been laughing at humans earlier and had defeated many competitors. Rek's eyes widened. He had heard of Mira's rumored abilities, but assumed she would collapse under 3 times gravity. The combat chamber was a large, hexagonal room. Gravity monitors hovered above, ready to adjust the pressure at a moment's notice. Weapons were minimal: padded staffs, light armor, and a few shields. The focus was hand-to-hand combat. When they stepped inside, the doors closed with a heavy thud. The gravity field started at normal levels. Rek flexed his arms and cracked his claws. Mira remained relaxed, breathing steadily. Then the monitors increased the gravity to 3 times standard. Rek stumbled almost immediately. His massive frame pulled him down. He hissed and pushed himself upright, trying to adjust. Sweat formed on his green scales. His movements slowed. Mira moved forward at the same steady pace she had used in the previous trial. Her legs pressed against the floor, but she did not falter. She circled Rek, studying his movements carefully. He lunged at her with a wide swing of his clawed arm. She stepped aside, barely moving her own body. Rek overextended and fell forward, hitting the ground with a heavy thump. The sound echoed through the chamber. Talvik observed from the control booth, making small notes on a datapad. He was calm but attentive. Rek struggled to stand, gasping for breath. Mira's calm confidence unsettled him. He had never faced a human who could withstand the weight of 3 times gravity without effort. The fight continued. Rek tried to adapt, but the higher gravity slowed his attacks. Mira's movements were precise. She avoided his strikes and used his momentum to push him backward. Each step she took seemed effortless under pressure that should have been crushing. After a few minutes, Rek collapsed completely, unable to continue. Mira helped him up, showing respect. Rek looked at her with a mix of shock and disbelief. How are you still standing?" he asked. Mira smiled faintly. "We humans are used to constant challenges. Earth trains us without machines, without programs. Nature itself prepares us. Storms, mountains, oceans. Everything weighs on us before we leave home." Rek could only nod, speechless. For the first time, he saw the human species differently. Not fragile, resilient. Meanwhile, other candidates and officers had observed the fight on monitors. Whispers spread quickly. Some admitted to themselves that they had underestimated humans. Later, in a quiet corridor, Mira ran into Leo again. He had been watching from a distance. "That was incredible," he said. "I didn't think anyone could handle 3 times gravity without specialized armor." Mira shook her head. "It's not about armor. It's about control. Strength grows from patience, not brute force. But you were moving faster than anyone else. How?" "Practice," she replied simply. Back in Talvik's office, the commander reviewed the results. He had been impressed by her control, speed, and endurance. The data showed she had lower fatigue levels and faster recovery times than any other candidate. Talvik sighed, thinking aloud. "We may have underestimated the human species. They are not fragile."
Not at all. Just then, a red alert flashed on the monitor.
A nearby asteroid colony, designated Vetra 9, had sent a distress signal. Raiders had attacked the colony and their automated defenses were failing. Talvik turned to his officers.
"We need a response team immediately. Select the best candidates."
Drox's eyes scanned the list. He paused when he saw Mira's name. He frowned. "Should we send a human? She is not experienced in actual combat." Talvik's gaze was steady. "She is capable. Send her." Mira was briefed quickly on the mission. The raiders, known as the Karth, were a low-gravity species that relied on advanced armor and technology. Their goal was to capture resources and enslave colonists. The colony's defense systems were offline due to sabotage. The response team assembled. Mira, Rek, and 3 other trainees from different worlds. Each had different strengths: speed, tactical skills. Mira was the smallest, but she carried no weapons other than her padded staff. The journey to Vetra 9 was tense. The shuttle's engines hummed steadily as it moved through empty space. Mira looked out the window, watching the asteroid field pass by. She had trained for extreme conditions on Earth, but space missions were different. The weightlessness of the shuttle felt light, almost playful, compared to her gravity training. The damage was visible even from orbit. Smoke rose from collapsed structures. Small explosions marked pockets of fighting. The Karth were already entrenched. Drax, monitoring remotely, muttered to Varn, "She might not survive this." Talvek shook his head. "Observe first. Do not judge too quickly." Inside the colony, the team disembarked. Gravity fluctuated wildly due to damaged systems. Some sections were nearly zero gravity, others spiked up to 2 times normal gravity. The Karth soldiers were clumsy in the high-gravity areas. Mira adjusted immediately. Her training allowed her to walk, run, and fight under different gravitational pressures. She guided her team through the corridors, rescuing colonists along the way. She lifted debris heavier than her own body and carried civilians to safe zones. Rek struggled under the higher sections, but Mira encouraged him. "Use your weight against gravity, not against yourself. Step carefully. Balance is more important than speed." Several times Mira had to pull or push her teammates to prevent them from falling. She moved through the most dangerous areas, her small body agile and strong. The Karth could not predict her movements and faltered. Deep inside the colony, the team found a group of raiders preparing for a larger attack. The Karth commander, a tall figure in dark armor, spoke over a communicator, unaware of Mira's presence. "The humans have interfered. Prepare for reinforcements. Priority target, human." Mira froze for a moment, hearing the words. Then she nodded to her team. They moved silently, using stealth and precise strikes. Pandemic was on. Her calm confidence inspired the others. The fight that followed was tense. Gravity shifted between sections. Mira adapted instantly, exploiting weaknesses in the Karth armor caused by the high-gravity sections. The enemy was strong, but unprepared for her speed and precision. She saved a soldier named Perek who had been trapped under debris. Using her own body weight and careful leverage, she lifted the rubble. Other soldiers were stunned at her strength. Even in heavy gravity, she moved like water, flowing around obstacles and enemies alike. By the end of the mission, the Karth were forced to retreat. The colony was damaged but saved. The team returned to the shuttle, exhausted but alive. Mira was the last to board, making sure everyone else was safe. Back in Iron Halo, Talvek reviewed the mission logs. Mira's performance was extraordinary. Even Drax could not deny it. The human had faced real combat, adapted to extreme gravity fluctuations, and led the team successfully. Leo watched the reports and smiled quietly. He had seen her training alone and now knew the truth. Humans were not fragile. They were resilient, adaptable, and capable beyond the Council's assumptions. Mira rested in her quarters, tired but satisfied. She thought of the colonists' faces, of the fear and relief she had witnessed. She also thought of the Council and their preconceived ideas. Outside her window, the stars shone silently. The galaxy was vast and full of unknown dangers, but Mira knew one thing: humans could face them, and she would prove it, again and again. The next trial would test endurance further, but after today, no one could dismiss her as weak. The fragile species had begun to show its strength. The shuttle returned to Iron Halo quietly, the hum of its engines fading into the background of the space station. Mira Hale stood near the observation window, her gaze fixed on the asteroid field beyond. The colony on Vetra 9 was safe, for now, but the warning messages replaying in her mind made her alert. The Karth had retreated, but they would come back stronger, and they had already marked humans as priority targets. She walked down the hall toward the medical bay, her body sore but steady. The effects of multiple gravity changes, intense combat, and rescue efforts left her muscles tight, yet she felt no true weakness. As she passed a training room, she noticed Rek inside, practicing movements Mira had shown him. The alien moved more deliberately now, listening and learning, a sign of respect growing in his eyes. Talvek had summoned a private briefing for her. She entered the command center, a circular room filled with holographic displays of nearby sectors. He stood by a large screen showing live scans of Karth movements and troop formations. Other council officers, including Drox and Varn, were present, but silent. "The Karth are regrouping," Talvek said without turning. "Intelligence suggests they are preparing a larger invasion. If they succeed, multiple colonies will fall. We need to anticipate their attack." Drox frowned. "And you intend to rely on humans again?" he asked, his voice tinged with doubt. Talvek turned to him. "Mira has proven her capabilities. We will use her skills to understand the Karth's tactics. She will observe, adapt, and report." Mira listened carefully. She had no weapons this time, only her knowledge of movement and gravity. Talvek activated a holographic map showing areas where Karth troops had been sighted.
"You will be part of a small reconnaissance team,"
Talvek continued. "Your goal is to infiltrate their forward base on asteroid Rylos 7. Gather information on their weapon systems, troop strength, and battle strategies. Avoid direct conflict if possible." Mira nodded. She preferred understanding the enemy first. Confrontation was a last resort. The team assembled included Rek, Leo, and 2 other trainees, Tano, a heavy-bodied alien with reinforced limbs, and Sira, a nimble scout from a low-gravity planet. The journey to Rylos 7 was tense. Mira observed the Karth fleet from the shuttle's viewport. They were organized and heavily armored, relying on low-gravity tactics. Every ship was built for mobility, not for endurance in heavy gravity. This was an advantage, Mira noted silently. As the shuttle approached the asteroid, gravity manipulation fields were carefully calibrated. Mira adjusted instantly, feeling the slight pull on her legs and the shift in pressure against her back. She tested her muscles, preparing for rapid movement once they landed. The team disembarked onto the asteroid's surface. It was rocky and uneven, with shallow craters and jagged cliffs. Gravity here was lower than Iron Halo, which caused Rek to stumble initially. Mira guided him, demonstrating balance techniques suitable for low-gravity environments. They moved silently across the surface, avoiding Karth patrols. Mira's senses were sharp, tracking even the faintest vibrations through the rocky ground. Every step she took was calculated, her body moving efficiently to conserve energy. Inside the Karth forward base, the team found the corridors dark and empty. Security systems flickered, showing a minimal presence. Mira led the way, noticing the signs of heavy armor and the tracks of previous patrols. They moved through narrow passages, careful to avoid detection. They reached a control hub, where Karth communications were recorded. Mira quickly interfaced with the system, using simple yet precise commands. She bypassed the security protocols, accessing troop movement logs and weapon deployment schedules. The data confirmed her earlier suspicions. The Karth were planning to disable gravity fields in key sections to create low-gravity zones where their soldiers would have a significant advantage. As they prepared to leave, the base's alarm suddenly triggered. Red lights flashed and the corridors filled with the sound of heavy boots. Karth soldiers were returning unexpectedly. The team had been discovered. Mira assessed the situation quickly. Gravity in the central corridor spiked to normal levels as automated systems tried to stabilize the environment. The Karth armor, optimized for low gravity, became cumbersome and slow. Mira moved with precision, leading the team in evasive maneuvers, using walls and corners for cover. Rex struggled but adapted under her guidance. Tano used brute force to block incoming soldiers, while Sira's speed allowed her to flank enemies and disable them quietly. Leo, though inexperienced in combat, followed Mira's instructions, moving strategically to support the team. Mira realized they needed an exit quickly. She identified a maintenance hatch that led to the outer surface of the asteroid. They would have to climb a steep ridge, all while Karth soldiers pursued them. The gravity on the ridge increased slightly, and Mira felt the pull but moved confidently, guiding the others step by step. They reached the ridge, breathing heavily but in control. Mira glanced back and noticed the Karth had split into two groups, one following the team, the other returning to secure their base. She calculated their movements, deciding on the safest path to Iron Halo. Using a small shuttle hidden nearby, the team departed just as the Karth began repairing their internal gravity systems. Mira's calm and precise actions ensured no one was left behind. As the shuttle lifted off, she watched the asteroid shrink below, the base behind them now a dangerous zone. Back on Iron Halo, the team reported their findings to Talvek. The data they retrieved included troop movement, weapon specifications, and the Karth plan to use gravity control against other colonies. Mira presented the information with clarity, her analysis sharp and concise. The council officers listened intently, some taking notes, others staring in disbelief at the depth of her insight. Drox, still skeptical, spoke quietly to Varn. "I cannot understand how one human can perform so efficiently under these conditions. It is unlike anything we have ever seen." Varn nodded, slowly. "Perhaps we have been wrong. Perhaps their species is not fragile." Talvik turned to Mira. "Your observations will allow us to prepare defenses and train other units more effectively. The Karth now have a known weakness: gravity manipulation against their own armor. This is invaluable." Mira listened but remained calm. She had learned long ago that success was in preparation, not pride. Her mind already shifted to future strategies, ways to optimize defenses and anticipate the enemy's next moves. Later, Mira walked through the quiet corridors of Iron Halo. The station had returned to its usual rhythm, with trainees and officers moving purposefully. Whispers still followed her, but now they were different, curious, respectful, questioning assumptions. She found Leo working on maintenance panels. He looked up as she approached.
"I heard the full report. You were incredible."
Mira smiled faintly. "We all did well."
It was a team effort. Leo shook his head.
"No, you led the team. You moved like gravity itself obeyed you."
"How is that even possible?" She laughed softly. "It is not magic. It is training and understanding your limits. The Karth depend on armor and technology. I depend on my body and my mind. That makes all the difference." As she spoke, Talvek watched from a distance. He had seen humans before, but Mira Hale was different. She was not only capable of surviving extreme gravity in combat, but of turning conditions that were meant to crush into advantages. The term fragile species no longer seemed accurate in any sense. That night, Mira rested in her quarters. Her muscles were sore from the infiltration and combat, yet the fatigue was satisfying. She reflected on the mission and the data gathered. The Karth were clever and dangerous, but they underestimated humans. They assumed weakness, and that was their mistake. Outside, the stars shone brightly. The galaxy was vast, with dangers lurking in the darkness. But Mira Hale had proven, in both strength and strategy, that humans could meet those dangers head-on. And the Council, whether they admitted it or not, had begun to see that the fragile species was anything but fragile. The day after the infiltration mission, Iron Halo was quieter than usual. The Council had begun reviewing the information Mira had gathered from the Karth forward base. Holographic displays filled the central command hall, showing troop movements, weapon placements, and gravity control mechanisms the enemy intended to use. Mira walked down the hall with purpose, her boots echoing softly on the metallic floor. Other trainees and officers watched her pass, some with curiosity, others with caution. She had become a symbol, though not by choice. She had proven that humans were more than fragile. They were adaptable, resilient, and capable of things many species had assumed impossible. Commander Talvek had requested a private audience. Mira entered the room, bowing slightly. Talvek, seated behind a large table of polished metal, gestured for her to sit. His silver scales reflected the light from the overhead panels. "You have done well, Mira," he said. "Your observations and leadership during the infiltration have changed our understanding of the Karth." "I only did what seemed necessary." Talvek's eyes were sharp. "You trained in extreme gravity before the trials, in secret. Tell me why." "I enjoy testing my limits. On Earth, we have mountains, storms, heavy oceans. Humans learn to push through hardship for the challenge itself. It makes ordinary conditions feel light. Training in 5x gravity was not for anyone else. It was for me." The commander paused, letting the words settle. Then he asked, "Do you understand what that means for the Council and for our defenses?" "I understand that humans are underestimated. That belief can be dangerous, if not corrected." Talvek smiled faintly. "Indeed, we will use this knowledge wisely. But there is more. The Karth have launched a fleet toward Iron Halo. Their plan is to disable gravity control in sections of the station to create low-gravity zones. They believe their armor and speed will give them the advantage." Mira listened carefully. Low gravity would weaken most species, but it would not bother her. She considered the best strategy to counteract this. "We can prepare sections to adjust gravity gradually," she said. "We can use high-gravity zones to slow their movement and exploit the limitations of their armor." Drox, standing near the doorway, frowned. "You speak as if humans can handle any gravity. Are you confident?" "I am not confident. I am not confident. I am prepared. Preparation matters more than confidence." Talvek nodded approvingly. "Then we will act on your strategy. We will use gravity as a weapon, and you will train the lead units in high-gravity maneuvers." The training chambers became alive with activity. Mira led sessions for soldiers of different species. She demonstrated how to move in heavy gravity, how to conserve energy, and how to turn the environment into an advantage rather than a hindrance. The aliens struggled at first, their muscles unfamiliar with the extra weight. Mira moved alongside them, adjusting their posture and stride, explaining techniques step by step. Rek, Tano, and Sira were part of her training team. Rek, who had laughed at humans before, now followed her instructions carefully, mastering movements he had previously found impossible. Tano's strength allowed him to practice lifting and moving large objects, while Sira adapted quickly to changes in gravity under Mira's guidance. The soldiers began to see the difference between mere brute force and intelligent movement. Mira taught them that endurance and control mattered more than size or armor. The training sessions lasted for hours, yet Mira's energy remained steady. She demonstrated exercises in 4x gravity, allowing the soldiers to experience the strain without injury. Meanwhile, intelligence reports indicated that the Karth fleet was closing in. The station's gravity systems were being fortified according to Mira's instructions. Sections that could support high gravity were prepared to trap enemy soldiers. Low gravity zones were mapped to minimize disadvantages for the station's defenders. As preparations continued, Mira took a moment to speak with Leo. "The Karth armor is strong in low gravity," she said. "But in high gravity, it becomes a weakness. They rely on mobility and speed. We will slow them down and strike at the points where they cannot adapt." Leo nodded, absorbing the strategy. "They will not expect this," he said. "They think humans are fragile." Mira smiled faintly. "Fragile is a word for those who do not understand limits. We will show them the truth." Days passed with rigorous training and preparations. The council observed quietly, making adjustments based on Mira's suggestions. Even Captain Drox began to recognize the effectiveness of her methods. The soldiers trained under her guidance began to move with efficiency, adapting to different gravitational pressures with surprising speed. Then the alert came. Karth ships appeared near the outer edge of Iron Halo's defense perimeter. Red lights flashed across the station. Warnings echoed in the halls. Mira stood with her team ready. Her heart beat steadily, her mind clear. She had prepared for this moment, and she was ready to act. The car began their attack in the low-gravity sections, expecting easy victories. Their soldiers moved quickly, relying on their advanced armor. But as they entered the first high-gravity zone, movement slowed. Their steps faltered, and coordination fell apart. Mira watched, calm and calculated. She had taught the defenders how to exploit these weaknesses. Using precise instructions, she guided small squads to intercept the disoriented Karth soldiers. Each movement was calculated. The defenders moved efficiently, using the extra gravity against the attackers. Alien soldiers who had once struggled under heavy pressure now moved with confidence, their bodies guided by Mira's training. Rek led a squad through a corridor where gravity fluctuated between 3x and 4x. Mira's earlier teachings helped them anticipate the changes. They disabled multiple Karth units without direct confrontation, turning the enemy's advantage into a disadvantage. Meanwhile, Mira herself moved through the battlefield with agility. She carried injured soldiers, cleared debris, and blocked attacks with her staff. Her movements were precise, conserving energy and using gravity to enhance her strength. Each action demonstrated the adaptability humans had cultivated over millennia. The council watched in astonishment. Even Captain Drox could not hide his surprise. He had witnessed strength, speed, and endurance that defied expectations. The Karth, once confident in their superiority, now faltered under the combined pressure of gravity manipulation and intelligent tactics. As the battle progressed, Mira identified the central weapon control of the Karth fleet. She realized that if this core was neutralized, the remaining ships would be forced to retreat. She formulated a plan, coordinating with her team to approach the weapon core while maintaining the advantage of high gravity. The operation was tense. Gravity fluctuated, alarms blared, and Karth soldiers attempted to intercept them. Mira moved steadily, guiding her team with clear instructions. Her calm and precise actions kept everyone coordinated, turning chaos into order. They reached the weapon core. Mira analyzed the controls and began the override procedure. Sparks flew, alarms sounded, but she remained focused. With a final adjustment, the core powered down, neutralizing the threat. The Karth fleet, now without coordination and struggling under the gravity fields, began a retreat. Iron Halo had survived. The council members, officers, and soldiers watched as the last enemy ships disappeared into the distance. Mira's leadership and training had turned what could have been a disaster into a victory. In the aftermath, the station celebrated cautiously. The casualties were minimal thanks to the effective use of gravity and precise coordination. Mira's reputation had grown. She was no longer the small human everyone underestimated. She had proven that adaptability, intelligence, and preparation could overcome sheer size and armor. Talvek approached her privately. "You have done more than survive, Mira. You have redefined what it means to be strong." Mira smiled faintly. Mira smiled faintly. "I only did what I had trained to do." Outside her quarters, the stars shone brightly. The Karth threat was diminished, but the galaxy was vast, and dangers awaited. Mira Hale knew that humans were capable of facing these challenges, and she would continue to prove it. The fragile species was no longer fragile. It was a force that others had underestimated at their peril. The calm after the Karth attack on Iron Halo was brief. Mira Hale, despite her exhaustion, prepared for the next stage of the battle. Intelligence reports indicated that the Karth were regrouping on a distant warship. Their goal was clear: strike Iron Halo again, using a more powerful weapon this time. Mira understood that direct confrontation could be disastrous if the gravity fields were not manipulated properly. Talvek convened a council meeting. Holographic displays of the Karth fleet filled the room. Red marks indicated enemy positions, weapon systems, and likely boarding points. The officers discussed strategies, but Mira's calm voice cut through the noise.
"The enemy relies on armor and low gravity," she said. "We can use this against them."
"We can create high-gravity zones inside their ship and slow them down. If we can reach the core, we can disable their weapon before it fires." Drox looked skeptical. "You propose boarding a full Karth warship alone?" "Not alone. We will infiltrate with a small team. Precision and control matter more than numbers." Talvek nodded. "Then the mission is clear. You will lead a small strike team. Rek, Tano, Sira, and Leo will accompany you. The goal is to disable the weapon core using gravity manipulation and tactical movement. No unnecessary engagement. Speed and efficiency are key." The team prepared in a small assault craft, its engines humming quietly. The warship loomed ahead, massive and imposing, its dark hull reflecting distant starlight. Mira's gaze remained steady. She had trained for this, had practiced under conditions far heavier than what awaited her. Nothing could surprise her. Inside the ship, gravity was set to near zero. The Karth moved swiftly, their armor giving them agility in these conditions. Mira adjusted immediately, feeling the light pull against her body and calculating each step with precision. She guided the team through narrow corridors, using walls and ceilings to maintain balance and avoid detection. The first encounter with enemy soldiers came quickly. A patrol blocked the path. Mira signaled the team to split, using the ship's vertical layout to their advantage. Rek and Tano engaged the enemies, but Mira moved through the shadows, adjusting gravity in localized sections to slow the armored Karth. Their movements became clumsy, the armor too heavy for the increased gravity. Mira advanced steadily, leading the team through the central corridors. Each section was a careful calculation, slightly increasing gravity here, allowing natural movement there, exploiting the enemy's dependence on their armor. Leo followed, amazed at her precision and calm under pressure. Sira flanked enemies with speed, disabling controls, while Rek used brute force to remove obstacles. They approached the central weapon core. The corridors were filled with red alert lights and the hum of the weapon charging. Mira analyzed the control panel from a distance. She could see the complex systems, the energy flows, and the activation sequences. Her mind worked quickly, determining the safest method to disable the weapon without setting off alarms that could trigger its immediate firing. The Karth commander appeared suddenly, a towering figure in dark armor. He mocked Mira's size, calling her species fragile and weak. Mira ignored the taunt, focusing on the panel. The commander lunged, relying on speed and strength. Mira sidestepped, using his momentum against him. Gravity shifted subtly beneath him, and his armor restricted his movement further. He stumbled and fell, unable to continue his attack. The team moved efficiently, disabling security systems and clearing the path to the core. Mira climbed to the control panel and began the override. Sparks flew, alarms blared, but her hands were steady. Every sequence she executed was precise. Gravity adjustments allowed her team to counteract enemy resistance effectively, turning what could have been chaos into controlled action. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, the core powered down. The weapon, poised to fire on Iron Halo, was neutralized. The remaining Karth soldiers were disoriented, struggling in the higher gravity zones Mira manipulated. The ship's automated systems were now under her control. Mira turned to her team. "We move out now. Follow my lead." Precision, speed, safety. They retraced their path, carefully avoiding remaining patrols. The ship's layout became familiar to Mira as she led them through maintenance tunnels, using small hatches and vertical shafts to bypass heavily guarded areas. Gravity shifts slowed the enemy and enhanced their own movements. Every step was deliberate, every action calculated. The shuttle awaited them outside the ship. Mira ensured everyone was aboard before herself. She was the last to leave, observing the warship as it drifted in orbit. The Karth had underestimated humans once again. Their confidence, built on assumptions of weakness, had been shattered. Back on Iron Halo, Talvek monitored the mission progress. He watched the assault craft land safely with all team members intact. Data streams confirmed the weapon core was offline. The Karth fleet, now uncoordinated and disoriented, retreated from the station's vicinity. The council members were astonished. Even Drox could not deny the effectiveness of Mira's leadership and strategy. Humans, once dismissed as fragile, had not only survived extreme conditions, but had turned those conditions into an advantage. Their adaptability, intelligence, and precise control had redefined what it meant to be strong. Mira exited the shuttle, her team beside her. The station personnel looked on with newfound respect. Soldiers who had once doubted humans now observed her carefully, some nodding in silent approval. The whispers of fragility had vanished, replaced with curiosity and admiration. Talvek approached Mira privately. "You have accomplished more than survival or victory. You have taught the galaxy a lesson in adaptability and strategy. Humans are no longer underestimated. We are capable of facing challenges, as anyone can be if they prepare and adapt. Strength is not always obvious. It is measured in endurance, understanding, and precision." Outside the observation deck, the stars glimmered silently. Mira knew the galaxy held dangers far beyond the Karth, but for now, she had proven that humans could meet them head-on. The fragile species had revealed its true strength, and the galaxy would take notice. The next stage would challenge them even further. But Mira Hale and her team had shown that with preparation, understanding, and courage, even the most underestimated could overcome overwhelming odds. Humans were not fragile. They were formidable, and the universe was beginning to realize it. The galaxy was quiet for a brief moment, almost as if it were holding its breath. Mira Hale stood on the observation deck of Iron Halo, her eyes tracing the paths of distant stars. The Karth had retreated, their weapon core disabled, but intelligence reports suggested they were regrouping and planning a more strategic assault. Mira knew this was only a temporary victory. Talvek entered, his silver scales reflecting the light of the station's core. He placed a hand on the railing beside her. "You have done well, Mira," he said. "The Council is impressed, but the Karth will not give up easily. They are learning. We must anticipate their next move."
Mira nodded. "I know, sir. We have an advantage, but they will try new strategies.
We must stay prepared and adapt."
Drox, standing nearby, crossed his arms. "Your species, I admit, has proven resilient, but even humans have limits. Can you continue this pace without breaking?" Mira smiled faintly. "Limits are not always what they appear to be. They are boundaries we test and redefine." The next mission required more than direct combat. The Karth were mobilizing across multiple sectors, attempting to create diversions while striking key points in the colony's supply lines. Mira proposed a strategic response: divide the defenders into highly mobile units, each trained to operate under extreme gravity changes. Her previous experiences, from the 5X gravity training to leading assaults on the Karth warship, had prepared her for this challenge. A team of the station's best soldiers gathered in the central hall. Mira led them through detailed briefings, showing how to manipulate gravity in localized areas to control the battlefield. Each unit learned to use the shifts to their advantage, slowing attackers, enhancing defensive maneuvers, and creating traps without direct confrontation. The aliens listened intently, following her demonstrations with precision. Rek and Tano, along with Sira and Leo, worked alongside Mira as instructors, helping to coordinate units and ensuring the strategies were understood. Mira emphasized adaptability above all. "The enemy will change tactics. We must change faster. Speed and intelligence will overcome brute force every time." Karth raiders attempted a coordinated strike on a supply station orbiting a minor planet. Mira and her team activated localized gravity fields, turning low-gravity corridors into zones that hindered the Karth. The raiders stumbled, their armor slowing them, while the defenders moved efficiently. Supplies were protected, and casualties were minimized. From Iron Halo's command center, Talvek and the Council observed with satisfaction. Even Captain Drox began to recognize Mira's leadership. Her tactical mind, combined with her ability to withstand extreme conditions, allowed the defenders to exploit weaknesses no one else could see. The Karth, confident in their armor and mobility, were now vulnerable in ways they did not anticipate. Following this success, Mira planned a daring operation, intercepting a Karth fleet preparing to attack a cluster of colonies simultaneously. Intelligence suggested that the fleet relied heavily on coordinated movements in low-gravity fields, assuming that defenders could not match their speed. Mira's plan was to turn the assumption against them. The strike team boarded a fleet of fast-response shuttles, each equipped with gravity modulators capable of creating localized high-gravity zones. Mira led the mission, her mind calculating precise adjustments to disrupt the enemy fleet. The Karth ships approached, their armor optimized for low gravity, confident in their speed. As the shuttles engaged, Mira activated the modulators. Sections of the battle space shifted to higher gravity, slowing the Karth's maneuvers and creating confusion among their ranks. Fighters collided, and enemy formations broke apart under the pressure of environments they were unprepared for. Mira's team moved with precision, intercepting critical points and disabling weapon systems without engaging in direct, costly combat. On the bridge of Iron Halo, the Council observed the battle unfold. Holographic displays showed the Karth struggling, their strategy collapsing as the defenders adapted. Mira's calculated use of gravity, combined with coordinated strikes, turned the tide before major destruction could occur. Back on the battlefield, Mira identified the Karth flagship's command center. Disabling it would further disrupt the fleet. She guided a small team in stealthy maneuvers through gravity-shifted corridors, moving past confused enemy forces. Rek and Tano provided protection, while Sira and Leo worked to disable security systems and access the control panel. Mira reached the command interface, her hands moving over the controls with practiced precision. Gravity adjustments slowed the crew, and her team neutralized resistance without casualties. The flagship's control systems were disabled, effectively breaking the Karth fleet's coordination. The enemy ships, now disorganized and unable to adapt to the shifting gravity fields, began retreating. The colonies remained safe, and the defenders had demonstrated a new level of strategic superiority. Mira's tactics had proven that intelligence, preparation, and adaptability could overcome even a seemingly superior force. Upon returning to Iron Halo, the team was met with quiet admiration. Soldiers who had doubted humans now respected Mira's abilities. The Council, including Talvek and even Drox, recognized that the concept of humans as fragile was outdated. They had seen a species capable of enduring extreme conditions, leading others with strategic brilliance and redefining the meaning of strength. Mira, however, remained grounded. She understood that victory in this battle was not the end. The galaxy was vast, with dangers that could not be predicted. Each challenge would require preparation, observation, and adaptation. Yet she knew one truth clearly. Humans were capable of more than anyone had assumed. As she rested in her quarters, Mira reflected on the trials, the infiltration, the battles, and the strategic victories. Each test, each mission had been a lesson in endurance and intelligence. The fragile species label no longer applied. Humans were resilient, formidable, and ready to face the universe's challenges. Outside the window, the stars glimmered silently. Mira Hale, small in stature but immense in capability, looked out into the galaxy. The Karth would return, or perhaps new threats would arise, but she was ready. Humanity had proven its strength, and she would continue to lead by example, showing that limits were meant to be tested, and that true strength was measured not just by size or armor, but by adaptability, intelligence, and courage. The galaxy, vast and dangerous, had begun to recognize that humans were a force to be reckoned with. And Mira Hale, who had been underestimated from the start, had become a symbol of that power, a reminder that the fragile species was, in fact, anything but fragile.